Hello, Matujima, and you're watching HornbillTV. If you have been following the news from India's northeast, you have likely come across a deeply disturbing headline. 6 Naga men abducted over a month ago were found dead in a forest in Manipur. But what led to this tragedy? Why were they taken in the first place, and why has this incident sparked fresh protests and political demands across the region? Let's break it down step by step. To understand what happened, we first need a brief look at Manipur's complex ethnic landscape. For decades, the state has been affected by tensions over land, identity and political representation involving the Meitei community and of the Imphal Valley and the Naga and Kuki-Zo communities of the surrounding hills. Large-scale ethnic violence erupted in May 2023, claiming hundreds of lives and displacing tens of thousands. The most dangerous turn in 2026 has been a sharp spike in tensions between the Naga and Kuki-Zo communities, adding a new and volatile dimension to the state's already fragile security situation. Over the preceding months, reports of attacks, arson incidents and rising inter-community tensions had contributed to growing mistrust and insecurity in the several hill districts. These developments fuel demands for stronger government intervention and heightened concerns about the deteriorating security situation. The immediate trigger is believed to have been the killing of 3 Tado Baptist Church leaders in Gangpokpi district earlier in May. Kuki organizations allege the Naga armed elements were responsible for the attack. The incident heightened tensions between the communities and was followed by a series of retaliatory actions and abductions. May 13, the day the crisis began. The crisis began on the morning of May 13 when unidentified gunmen ambushed 2 vehicles carrying leaders of the Tado Baptist Association of India (TBAI) and the United Baptist Council (UBC) between Kotlen and Kotsim village in Gangpokpi district. The church leaders were returning from a convention in Churachandpur when they came under attack. 3 were killed and 4 others injured. The Tado community is closely associated with the Kuki-Zo tribes, and Kuki groups blamed Naga armed elements for the killings. Manipur Deputy Chief Minister Nemcha Kipken later described the targeting of church leaders as, underquote, unprecedented. Retaliatory violence followed swiftly. In Nune district, a Naga civilian, Wilson Tanga, was killed in an incident that Naga organizations attributed to Kuki militants. Around the same time, multiple abductions were reported across Gangpokpi and neighboring districts. Among the most significant incident was the abduction of 18 Naga civilians from Lelon Vaipe village in Gangpokpi district. Several of those abducted belonged to the Thiomai family of Konsakul, who had gathered the previous day for a wedding celebration. According to reports and according to family accounts, armed men intercepted their vehicles, separated the women from the men and took the male captives away. The women were later released. The abducted included pastors Mano Thiomai and Kenpibo Tawang, along with Dilip Thiomai, Penlungpo, Kaluangpo Abonmai and Penrong Webo Thiomai. Later that evening, 2 Naga Catholic trainee priests, Albert Pame Aching and Peter Poche Kavisye, were abducted while traveling from Imphal to Maram. They were subsequently released unharmed. As tensions escalated, several Kuki civilians were abducted in Naga majority areas of Senapati district. While many were subsequently released, 14 Kuki men remained in Naga custody for nearly a month, becoming central to efforts to negotiate the release of the 6 missing Naga men. Over the next 2 days, negotiations involving government officials, church leaders and civil society organizations secured the release of most hostages. However, 6 Naga men and 14 Kuki men remained captive. The resulting deadlock persisted for nearly a month. Naga groups refused to release the remaining Kuki captives until their 6 missing men were returned, while Kuki organizations maintained they had no information on the whereabouts of the 6 Nagas. The impasse finally ended on June 9 when the United Naga Council (UNC) released the 14 Kuki hostages after receiving assurances that efforts were underway to trace the missing Naga men. As the crisis extended into its 4th week, the United Naga Council (UNC), the apex Naga body in Manipur, was under immense pressure from its community. On June 9, the UNC made a decisive move. It released the 14 Kuki hostages who had been in Naga custody. According to Naga organizations, this difficult decision came after assurances regarding efforts to locate the 6 missing Naga men were conveyed through Nagaland Chief Minister Manipur'S following discussions with Union Home Minister Amit Shah. The Naga community's decision was rooted in humanitarian and Christian values, with the UNC citing a commitment from the Manipur government to trace the 6 men within the next 48 hours. The safe return of the 14 Kuki hostages was a significant moment, bringing relief to their families and was seen by many as a humanitarian gesture. Nagaland Chief Minister Manipur'S, who played a crucial role in these deliberations, later revealed that the release was carried out in response to appeals from church organizations led by the Baptist World Alliance and following consultations with Naga civil society groups. Rio credited the UNC and other apex Naga organizations for exercising restraint and choosing the path of compassion and peace despite what he described as an extremely volatile situation. However, he warned that appeals for the reciprocal release of the 6 Naga hostages allegedly held by members of the Kuki community needed to be met in good faith. The hopes of the Naga community were tragically short-lived. On June 10, just one day after the Kuki hostages were released, security forces launched an extensive search operation. The operation involved nearly 450 personnel from the Manipur Police, CRPF and Assam Rifles, assisted by sniffer dogs and forensic experts. After nearly 24 hours of sustained searching, the team made a grim discovery in a forested area between Lelon Waipe and Karam Waipe villages in Kangpokpi district. According to several media reports, the 6 bodies recovered were found in a severely mutilated condition, making visual identification difficult. The recovered remains are believed to be those of the 6 Naga men abducted on May 13. Community organizations and family members identified them as Reverend Dr. Manu Thiomai, Ken Pipo Chawang, Penrong Wibo Thiomai, Dilip Thiomai, Kaliwangpo Abonmai and C.H. Penrilong. However, authorities have not publicly announced final forensic identification results at the time of writing this report. Now let's have a look at the aftermath and public reactions. The immediate flashpoint was the Jawaharlal Nehru Institute of Medical Sciences (JNIMS) mortuary in Imphal. After the 6 bodies were brought in around 2 a.m. on June 10, security had to be heightened. By 4:30 p.m., a large crowd of hundreds driven by grief and anger over the inadequate action by the authorities had gathered at the mortuary complex. As emotions ran high, the situation quickly turned volatile. To prevent a total breakdown of orders, Manipur police personnel were forced to fire tear gas shells to disperse the crowd, a controversial step that was taken to bring the area back under control. The protests also resulted in minor property damage to the hospital complex. The unrest was not confined to the hospital. It spread quickly across the state. In a clear sign of anger at the authorities, the Manipur Unit Office of the Naga People's Front (NPF) at Liang Mai Tepo in Senapati district was attacked and set on fire by a mob on the night of June 10. Protesters accused authorities of failing to secure the safe release of the abducted civilians. The attackers set furniture and office property ablaze. Trucks were set on fire. At around 7:20 p.m. on June 10, a container truck and a 6-wheeler truck were reported set ablaze at a dumping site in Karong Senapati district. The empty vehicles had arrived from Imphal earlier that day and were set on fire, an incident that added to the tense atmosphere. On the night of June 10, unknown armed individuals opened fire on Ting Pai, Kuki village in the Saikul region of Kangpokpi, though no casualties were reported. The violence escalated to a deadly level in the early hours of June 11 in Kultuk Kuki village, a small settlement of around 25 houses located about 30 kilometers from the Kamtong district headquarters. Unidentified armed individuals launched an attack, killing 2 Kuki community leaders, Let Min Lang Haukip and Lun Min Thang Haukip, and injuring 1 other person. The attack also resulted in the burning of 6 houses in the village. While early reports blamed various armed groups, authorities were still ascertaining the identities of the perpetrators. Now let's look at the civil society response. Shutdown and solidarity as violence erupted. The United Naga Council (UNC) called for a 24-hour total shutdown across all Naga inhabited areas of Manipur, which began at 6 a.m. on June 11. This was a clear attempt to channel the community's grief into a show of solidarity and political pressure rather than allowing it to spiral into further violence. In the face of the escalating crisis, the Manipur government stated it would not remain a mute spectator. Chief Minister Y. Kemchan Singh assured that the culprits responsible for the murder will be arrested and punished as per law. Central investigative agencies were subsequently involved in the probe, and NIA personnel were reported to have visited Imphal as part of the ongoing investigation. The UNC played a central role throughout the hostage crisis, from its involvement in the release of the Kuki hostages to its response following the tragedy. Following the recovery of the 6 bodies, the organization strongly condemned the killings, describing them as a sacrilegious and satanic act and a gross violation of human rights. The council announced that the mortal remains of the 6 victims would not be formally received until its charter of demands is addressed by both the government of Manipur and the government of India. The UNC's 4-point charter of demands includes abrogation of the suspension of operations (SOO) agreement with all Kuki militant groups, immediate arrest and prosecution of all Kuki National Front President Group (KNFP), personnel allegedly involved in the abduction of 18 Naga civilians, including 2 pastors, and the subsequent cold-blooded murder of the 6 victims, as well as arrest of Lalpur Vaipai, chief of Lilon Vaipai village. Declaration of the Kuki National Front President Group (KNFP) as a terrorist organization, and immediate removal of Manipur Deputy Chief Minister Nemcha Kipken from office, alleging a conflict of interest arising from her marital relationship with Semtin Tang alias Tang Poi Kipken, whom the organization identified as president of the KNFP and complicit in the killing. The UNC argued that her removal would help restore public trust and confidence in the state government, and that her continuation in office would amount to a compromise of internal security concerns for both the state and the nation. Now let's have a look at the Manipur government's response. The Manipur government strongly condemned the killings and assured that those responsible would be brought to justice. Chief Minister Y. Kemchan Singh stated that the government would not remain a mute spectator and that the perpetrators would be arrested and punished according to the law of the land. He conveyed his deepest condolences to the Peravit's family and strongly condemned the brutal act, stating that violence has no place in our society. The government sought the involvement of central investigative agencies in the case. An NIA team was reported to have visited the mortuary as part of the ongoing investigation, while authorities continued efforts to establish the circumstances surrounding the killings and identify those responsible. Now, Deputy Chief Minister Nemcha Kipken, who belongs to the Kuki community, also condemned the incident and appealed for peace and restraint amid growing tensions. She described the unlawful killing of the 6 Naga hostages as a heinous act of violence that had deeply shocked society. Role of other civil society organizations. The Kuki NP Manipur KIM was the principal Kuki organization responding to the hostage crisis. Throughout the month-long standoff, the organization maintained that 14 innocent Kuki civilians were being unlawfully held by Naga groups and described the situation as a serious violation of human rights and the rule of law. To pressure authorities and secure the release of the hostages, KIM organized a series of shutdowns and protest programs across Kuki areas. It also led public demonstrations in Kangpokpi district and repeatedly demanded that the case be investigated by the National Investigation Agency. After the 6 bodies were discovered on June 10, the organization condemned the killings and called for a thorough and impartial investigation, while urging authorities to allow the law to take its course. Several Naga civil society organizations played an active role. The All Naga Students Association Manipur and SAM issued a 4-day ultimatum to the government on May 29 and later launched a protest march to meet the hostages' families. The Naga Women's Union NWU held massive protests across hill districts, staged a sit-in in Imphal, and petitioned the Prime Minister to cancel the SOO agreement. The Naga People's Organization, the NPO, helped the UNC release the Kuki hostages and demand justice. On the Kuki side, the Kuki NP Manipur KIM condemned the killings and called for a fair investigation, while the Kuki NP Nagaland KIN called it a barbaric act. The Joint Tribes Council (JTC) Manipur also voiced concern and demanded urgent action. The killings drew swift condemnation from political leaders across the northeast and beyond. Nagaland Chief Minister Manipur described the incident as horrific and inhuman and expressed deep sadness, noting that the tragedy was particularly painful because it came after Naga organizations had facilitated the safe release of 14 Kuki hostages. Meghalaya Chief Minister Konrad Sangma called it a senseless act of violence. The incident has also deepened mistrust between communities and highlighted the continuing fragility of peace in Manipur. It has intensified debate over security arrangements, particularly the suspension of operations SOO agreement with Kuki militant groups, which the UNC and other Naga bodies argue has failed to prevent violence and has instead emboldened armed groups. The central government has been urged by Naga bodies to intervene and take strong actions, including launching operations to evict SOO cadres from Naga inhabited areas and ensuring the safety and security of all communities. The tragedy has become a major test for the state and the central government's ability to manage the complex ethnic tensions in Manipur. Now, beyond official statements and organizational responses, the discovery of the 6 bodies has triggered intense discussion on social media and public forums, where many people have expressed grief, anger and frustration over the handling of the crisis. For many observers, the tragedy has become more than a criminal investigation. It has come to symbolize the continuing insecurity faced by civilians in conflict-affected areas and has intensified calls for stronger measures to prevent future abductions, improve intelligence coordination, and restore public confidence in the rule of law. The question that echoes across social media and public discourse is a simple but haunting one. Could this have been prevented? Now, what began as a cycle of retaliatory abductions has ended in the deaths of 6 civilians whose families spent nearly a month hoping for their safe return. While the hostage crisis itself has ended, the broader question it raises about security, accountability and inter-community relations in Manipur remain unresolved. The active involvement of the United Naga Council, civil society organizations such as ANSAM and the Naga Women's Union, community leaders and government authorities highlights both the complexity of the crisis and the deep grievances that continue to shape the state's fragile security environment. As investigations continue and demands for justice grow louder, the tragedy stands as a stark reminder of the human cost of prolonged ethnic conflict and the urgent need for lasting peace in the region. At the time of writing, several aspects of the case, including the final forensic identification of the victims and the determination of responsibility for the killings, remain under investigation. This is a developing story, and further findings may provide additional clarity on the events that led to the deaths of the 6 men. At a time of heightened emotions and grief, it is equally important for the public to exercise restraint and responsibility. Viewers are urged not to circulate unverified claims, rumors, or graphic content on social media, as misinformation can inflame tensions and hinder efforts to establish the truth. Authorities, community leaders, and civil society groups have repeatedly appealed for calm, stressing that accountability must be pursued through lawful investigation rather than speculation. As the region mourns the loss of 6 lives, the collective responsibility of every citizen is to uphold peace, reject hate, and allow facts, not rumors, to guide public discourse. That's all we have for now. Keep watching Hornbill TV.